So for our own album quest today, we're zeroing in on one specific group, round one, group 209. And the contenders were, well, pretty diverse.
Incredibly diverse.
Yeah.
You had two big compilations. First, the Beach Boys' Original Gold, a huge 41-track collection.
Aggressive.
And then the Essential 70s collection, various artists, super eclectic.
Okay, so two compilations. What were they up against?
Two structured artist albums. You had Timeless from the Bee Gees, another compilation but focused on one artist, and George Ezra's second album, Stayin at Tamara's.
Right, George Ezra. So a real mix there.
And the author picked up on a theme straight away, a big one. Vocal contrast. It really set the stage.
Well, you had the falsettos versus the baritone. You know, the super famous, incredibly high harmonies of the Beach Boys and the Bee Gees.
Icons of the high notes.
Absolutely. Pitted directly against the deep, really sonorous, almost earthy baritone of George Ezra.
So, like the author joked, it was literally the highs and lows of music in one group.
Pretty much perfectly put, yeah.
Huh.
Highs and lows. So let's dig in and see which end of the spectrum won, and maybe more importantly, why it won.
Yeah, the why is always the interesting part with these rankings. And the beauty of this album quest format is that the author has to explain why something gets knocked out. They have to articulate it, sometimes, quite painfully. So let's start right at the bottom. Group 209, fourth place. Who failed to make the cut first?
Okay, so looking at the methodology, that demand for consistency is key. It's one thing to love a band's biggest hits, right? But when you're forced to listen to a whole compilation, warts and all, multiple times, and compare it to something really focused, well, the flaws just jump out.
And that's exactly what happened with the fourth place finisher.
Precisely. The Essential 70s collection. It got eliminated, basically, because it just couldn't hang together consistently.
It sounds almost inevitable for a big multi-artist compilation like that, especially under this kind of scrutiny. Highly eclectic, you said.
Extremely. It lacked any real sonic thread tying it together, other than, the 70s. To get through in this system, an album needs a strong, consistent level of quality. This one just had too many bumps, too many jarring changes in style and quality.
Yeah. So by the third or fourth listen, the author's patience was wearing thin.
Exactly. It suffered from, well, an identity crisis, really.
Yeah.
Too much filler, too many tracks that just dragged down the genuine classics that were actually on there.
Okay, let's get specific then. What were the tracks or elements that really damaged its ranking? What dragged it down?
The main killer was that genre fragmentation and the inconsistency in, well, quality or perhaps suitability for repeated listens in that pop context. The author pointed specifically to The Bottle by Gil Scott-Heron.
A classic, of course, but maybe not easy listening.
Right. It's brilliant, politically charged soul commentary, 10 minutes long. But the author described listening to it repeatedly, sandwiched between, say, pure pop hits, as infuriatingly tedious.
Ouch. Tedious.
Yeah, and you can see why in that specific context. That jump from serious, lengthy social commentary to maybe some bubblegum pop track.
Yeah.
It breaks that cohesion the methodology demands.
That makes total sense. An artist album usually commits to a certain sound, a mood. A various artists compilation just commits to a decade, maybe.
Yeah.
And you get whiplash.
You absolutely do. And then there was another factor the author mentioned, the funky cheese.
Funky cheese, okay.
Music that was, enjoyable enough, but maybe lacked the kind of depth or sophistication needed for a best album of all time competition. Funkadelic had two tracks on there. One Nation, Under a Groove, and not just knee-deep.
Classics of funk.
Undeniably. But labeled here as enjoyable cheese. And the point was, maybe that kind of enjoyable cheese doesn't stand up quite as well under intense, repeated listening compared to more focused or maybe sophisticated songwriting.
Okay, fair enough. But this collection did have some absolute stone-cold classics, right? We're not just talking filler and cheese.
Oh, definitely not. It had genuine cornerstone tracks. Carly Simon's You're So Vain, Desmond Decker's You Can Get It If You Really Want It. Huge songs.
Tracks that really define that era.
They do. And the author even gave specific high praise where it was due. Gloria Gaynor's vocals on Never Can Say Goodbye were called supreme.
Supreme! That's high praise indeed.
It is. Powerful endorsement. But even with moments of supreme quality, the compilation made a critical error. A real own goal in terms of curation.
The selection itself. What was the mistake?
The live version mistake.
Yes. Always risky.
Especially with an iconic track, they included a live version of I Will Survive.
The disco anthem. A live version.
Yep. And it was noted as being hardly definitive. In a competition this tight, where every little thing matters, swapping out a perfect canonical studio recording for a potentially rougher, lower fidelity live track, it's just sabotage.
It suggests the curator maybe prioritized just filling the track list, or maybe what was easily available over picking the absolute best defining version.
Exactly. Quality control wasn't there. So the verdict for fourth place becomes pretty clear. Just two inconsistent, jarring genre shifts, some tracks that really tested patience, and self-inflicted wounds like picking a non-definitive live version.
The price you pay for being a sprawling collection rather than a focused artistic statement.
Precisely. Which leads us nicely from a compilation failing due to scattershot quality to a catalog compilation failing due to one single but apparently devastating flaw.
Okay. So moving up the ranks to third place, this must be the Beach Boys.
It is. Original gold.
Now, this is where some listeners might really start questioning things. The Beach Boys. Knocked out in round one, this is a 41-track monster collection. Legends.
Absolute legends. They practically invented the sound of California in the 60s, and the author's love for them is clear. The review mentions Surfing Amorite and lists track after track. Surfin' Safari, Surfer Moon, Surfin' USA, Catch a Wave.
And numerous others that mention surfing. Yeah, the enthusiasm comes through.
And it's deserved. The highs on this collection are incredibly high. Timeless genius. Good Vibrations is singled out. Still sounds unique, structurally innovative, even after all these decades.
Still sounds like the future somehow.
It really does. Then you've got the sheer infectiousness of California Girls, the pure energy of fun I get around, the joy of Barbara Ann, rock and roll music, even the slightly more sophisticated stuff like Tears in the Morning.
Just listing those. It's an incredible run of hits. The core elements are praised too. Gorgeous harmonies, contagious verses and choruses, and beautiful melodies. So how? How does an album built on that foundation lose? Especially to a contemporary artist's second album.
This is where that methodology really bites. It forces a full accounting, remember. 41 tracks means you're not just getting the monster hits. You're getting a lot of deeper cuts, album tracks, maybe some experiments.
Stuff the casual fan might not know, or might even skip on their own playlist.
Exactly. But in this competition, you can't skip. You have to listen to everything, multiple times. And the author found that the sheer breadth, the volume of material, actually became a weakness.
Because not all of it is Good Vibrations level.
Pretty much. That lesser-known Beach Boys stuff, as the author puts it, starts to feel like more of an acquired taste under that pressure of repeated critical listening.
Any specific examples of tracks that dragged it down?
Yeah, they mentioned a few. The Acoustic Cotton Fields, the structurally slightly weird The Little Girl I Once Knew. The perhaps less remarkable Add Some Music to Your Day. These were flagged as tracks that maybe didn't quite hold up.
Style shifts, too.
Big time. Some of that material was described as bordering on crooner style-y, which, clashes quite dramatically with the high-energy surf rock or the later, more complex Baroque pop they're famous for. That inconsistency spread across 41 tracks, it just lowers the overall average score when you listen start to finish again and again.
Okay, I can see how consistency becomes an issue with such a huge track list. But wait, are we seriously saying that 41 tracks, packed with acknowledged genius, got knocked out because of a few uneven deep cuts and the accents of just one song?
That's the crux of it.
That feels harsh, almost like a personal vendetta against the compilation's curator rather than a fair assessment of the music itself.
It's a really critical point, and the author defends the rationale based on the methodology's integrity. The argument is, it wasn't just any omission, it was deemed an absolutely criminal omission.
Okay, criminal is strong language. Which track was it?
Wouldn't it be nice?
Okay. Wouldn't it be nice? From Pet Sounds.
Exactly. And the author argued that this specific track is fundamental. It defines the heart, the ambition, the emotional core of the Beach Boys' absolute creative peak. To leave it off with supposedly definitive compilation.
This is a massive hole.
A huge hole. An emotional black hole, as the author put it, that no amount of admittedly great surf rock filler can possibly make up for. The album quest forces a judgment not just on the songs themselves, but on the curation. How well does this compilation represent the artist's greatness?
And if the curator misses arguably the defining track from their most important album,
then the compilation fails that test. It's deemed an incomplete, flawed representation.
That's a powerful argument, actually. It shifts the focus from just, are the songs good, to, does this collection do its job properly?
Precisely. And it's ironic because the author did find things to praise, even in the less obvious inclusions. There was specific praise for the 80s cover of California Dreaming that was on there.
Oh, yeah.
Called it the most Beach Boys-esque song ever written by someone other than the Beach Boys. High praise for capturing their sound.
So even finding gems like that couldn't save it.
Apparently not. Despite finding an external track that nailed the spirit, the failure to include their own absolute essential, wouldn't it be nice, led directly to the downmarking. That single missing track sunk the average score below the albums that were more complete, more cohesive, even if their peaks weren't necessarily higher than Good Vibrations.
Wow, so the Beach Boys are out due to a failure of curation. A single fatal omission.
Brutal, but that's the system. So if the 70s collection failed on inconsistency and the Beach Boys failed on a critical omission, that brings us to the two albums that did advance.
Right. Second place and first place. Starting with the runner-up, the Bee Gees.
The Bee Gees' Timeless compilation, finishing a strong second.
Now, Timeless is also a compilation, but focused on one band. How did it avoid the Beach Boys' fate?
Well, structurally it did something interesting. It runs in reverse chronological order.
Starts with the later stuff and goes backward. Unusual for a greatest hits.
Very. It means you start strong with the big, polished later hits, kicks off with You Win Again.
Which the author loved, right? Felt like they were winning every time I hear it.
Exactly. Good psychology for a competition track. It gives you that immediate hit of polished late 80s energy.
Smart sequencing, maybe. Especially for repeated listens. Get the listener hooked early.
Could be. And then from there, it works back through the massive 70s hits. More Than a Woman, Too Much Heaven, Night Fever, and of course the absolute behemoth.
Stayin' Alive. Yeah.
You can't escape it. The track everyone associates with them, with disco, with Saturday Night Fever.
They are the quintessential disco band for many people.
That's the popular image, absolutely. But this is where the author's deep listening, forced by the format, revealed a crucial distinction. It separated the Bee Gees' reputation from their musical reality.
How so? Less disco than we think.
Considerably, according to this analysis. Yes, Stayin' Alive has that dance beat it clocks in at 104 BPM, which is definitely disco territory. But the author argued that most of the Bee Gees' material on Timeless is actually, quote, more middle of the road in a classical 70s songwriter vein.
So using disco elements maybe, but not defined solely by them, more like accomplished songwriters who adapted to the times.
That's exactly the argument. And this is where the technical nuance, the details picked up on repeated listens, really help them edge out the Beach Boys compilation.
Okay, let's get into those details. What specific musical elements stood out and elevated Timeless?
This was key to its success in the ranking. The sophistication in the arrangements rewarded that close listening. Take Stayin' Alive again? Okay, it's got the beat. But the author highlights the prominent use of orchestral strings.
Strings in a disco track.
Well, that's the point. It's not very disco-like, as the author notes. Pure disco is often more minimal, functional. The Bee Gees were layering their tracks, treating them like proper compositions first, dance tracks second, perhaps.
Interesting. What other details? You mentioned something about funky wonk guitar.
Yes, I love that description. The author pointed out the little fills scattered throughout their songs, tiny details you might miss first time round, and specifically called out a recurring four-note flourish of funky wonk guitar.
Funky wonk. What exactly is that?
If you listen closely, it's that very specific, tight, often slightly muted guitar riff, sometimes with a wah-wah effect. It's a classic 70s sound, providing rhythm and groove without just being straight funk. It adds texture.
Right, those little rhythmic details that bed the song down. It shows craftsmanship.
Exactly, craftsmanship that maybe you only fully appreciate on the third or fourth listen. They also pointed out how orchestral strings were used deliberately to color the mid to end section of a song, using words as an example. Not just upfront melodrama, but subtle shading.
And there's another instrument mentioned, a glockenspiel.
Yeah, on Massachusetts. The inspired glockenspiel, that bright chiming sound that really lifts the chorus. It's these small, thoughtful touches, intentional orchestration choices that showed a depth beyond just catchy tunes.
So they weren't just banging out hits, they were composing quite intricate pop pieces. That analysis must have led to some interesting thoughts about their influences and legacy.
It really did. The deep listening forced connections, both backward and forward in time. Looking back, the early stuff, the connection to the Beatles was apparently quite striking.
Really? The Bee Gees and the Beatles?
On the early tracks, yeah. Songs like Lonely Days and especially New York Mining Disaster 1941, the author heard it as almost a faux Lennon Scouse accent. It suggests they started out, like many bands then, heavily influenced by the British invasion sound before finding their own unique voice.
Okay, that makes sense. But the forward connection the author made, that one seemed genuinely surprising.
It was definitely unexpected. The idea that the Bee Gees influenced modern balladeers,
Specifically.
specifically James Blunt. The author felt that songs like I Started a Joke sound exactly like James Blunt and could easily have inspired his first couple of albums.
Wow, James Blunt. I can actually kind of hear that now you say it. The vocal style, the slightly melancholic, acoustic-driven balladry.
Right. It's a connection you probably wouldn't make casually, but under this intense comparison, it emerged. The author even threw Gary Barlow into the mix as potentially drawing from that same Bee Gees songwriting well.
That completely reframes their legacy, doesn't it? Not just disco icons, but maybe the sort of unsung godfathers of a certain type of 21st century sensitive pop.
It's a huge conclusion,
Oh, wow.
potentially, and it came about purely because the album quest methodology forced that deep comparative listening. So the Bee Gees advanced. They got second place because, despite the disco label, their music showed real depth, technical sophistication, and consistent songwriting craft.
Okay, so the 70s comp was out due to inconsistency. The Beach Boys out due to a fatal omission. The Bee Gees secured second place with unexpected technical depth, which leaves only one, the winner of Group 209.
The Dark Horse, the surprise victor.
George Ezra, staying at Tamara's.
George Ezra's Staying at Tamara's, his second album, remember, a big hit, #1 in the UK back in 2018. But beating the Bee Gees and the Beach Boys, it really underscores the core lesson from this group. Sometimes quiet consistency and a lack of major flaws beats slawed, sprawling greatness in a head-to-head.
And stylistically, Ezra is the complete opposite of the Bee Gees and Beach Boys, vocally at least. He's the baritone in this fight.
Exactly. That singer-songwriter, grounding, heavily influenced by folk and blues. That deep, distinctive, mature vocal was the anchor in this group of high flyers.
So what specifically pushed Staying at Tamara's into the top spot? What did it do better than Timeless?
The key factor was the overall Alvar experience. It was praised for being supremely consistent, really focused, described as having a slow, relaxed pace, strong musicianship throughout, and crucially, a collection of songs that complement each other very well.
Cohesion. That thing the big compilations lack.
Precisely. This album felt like a unified whole, perfectly sequenced, apparently. It lets you settle into its specific mood, its atmosphere, and it stays there. That's a massive advantage when you're listening start to finish multiple times.
It sounds like an album designed to be an album, not just a collection of potential singles, which, in this World Cup format, is gold.
Pure gold. And the author also highlighted Ezra's smart approach to blending tradition with a contemporary feel. He uses those folk and blues foundations, the storytelling, that vocal style, but gives it a modern twist.
So it doesn't sound dated.
Not at all. It avoids being just a throwback. It's described as modernized, accessible folk pop.
Can you give a specific example of that blend? How did he make old sounds feel new?
The track Don't Matter Now was singled out. The arrangement features a lot of echo call and response, particularly with the horn section.
Okay, that sounds quite traditional. Old school, almost.
Exactly. Old-fashioned, as the author put it. Straight out of early jazz or folk playbook. But the clever part is how Ezra layers it. He puts that classic horn arrangement over a very contemporary, subtle beat and structures the verses like modern pop.
Ah, so fusing the elements. Taking the old texture, putting it in a new frame.
Perfectly put. Honoring the past, but making it feel current. That skill made the album feel fresh and engaging, even after multiple listens.
And it wasn't purely introspective folk pop either, right? It had big hits.
Oh yeah, undeniable pop strength was there too. Shotgun and Paradise were huge singles, ensuring it had that commercial punch. But interestingly, those hits weren't cited as the reason it won.
What was the reason then, if not the hits?
Consistency again, sheer unwavering quality across the board. The author stated the album never wavers. Even the non-single tracks, the deeper cuts like All My Love or Hold My Girl, maintained that same high level of quality and fitted the overall relaxed, cohesive mood.
So no weak links.
Seemingly very few. The collaboration savior with First Aid Kit was also mentioned as a high point, adding a nice textural variation without disrupting the album's flow.
But it wasn't totally perfect, was it? There was one tiny criticism.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
The single demerit. Even the winner wasn't flawless in the author's ears. Points were apparently lost for unnecessary swearing on one track, Only a Human.
Unnecessary swearing. Okay, that's specific.
It is specific and probably subjective, but it shows how incredibly fine the margins must have been. You know, if the Bee Gees album had been just a tiny bit more consistent, maybe had one less slightly weaker track, that single swear word might have tipped the balance.
But the Bee Gees compilation, by its nature, probably had dips the Ezra album didn't.
Exactly. So ultimately, that minor lyrical quibble wasn't enough to derail Ezra. The final verdict was clear. Staying at Tamara's was simply an all-round quality offering. Its consistency, its excellent sequencing, its lack of any major dips or glaring omissions. That solid reliability just edged out the Bee Gees offering, which, while brilliant in parts, was perhaps inherently limited by being a career-spanning compilation.
It really is the triumph of the focused, complete artistic statement over the potentially patchy career summary.
That's it. When you force albums into this kind of intense comparative listening, the well-executed, cohesive album, even a relatively recent one, can absolutely beat decades of hits if those hits come packaged with flaws, whether it's filler, bad versions, or those critical omissions.
So let's wrap up the final scores for Group 209. Who's moving on, who's out?
Okay, the final ranking. First place, advancing to the next round, George Ezra's Staying at Tamara's.
The dark horse winner.
Second place, also advancing, the Bee Gees' Timeless.
Strong showing, but second fiddle this time.
Knocked out in third place, largely due to that crucial missing track, the Beach Boys' Original Goal.
A giant falls.
And in fourth place, eliminated first, the eclectic but ultimately too inconsistent Essential 70s collection.